Do you have the fear that when you return home from work or school, your undocumented parent or family member may not be there because they may have been deported? Well, if you do not, then roughly 10 to 12 million people living in the United States live with that fear every single day. And it's terrifying. And I'm telling you this not only because this is a TJPS special report on this situation, but because a story broke at CBS News a month ago about this very story. This is concerning, and here was the headline at the time. Quote, ICE moves to quickly deport more immigrants without court hearings. End quote. Here's the lead quote. The Trump administration said Wednesday it is making more undocumented immigrants eligible to be quickly deported without a court hearing, instructing federal immigration agents to oversee the nationwide expansion of a policy that had long been limited to border areas. End quote. Once again, this story broke at CBS News last month on October 21st. In July of 2019, ICE implemented a new set of rules which essentially permitted ICE agents to expand their use of, quote, expedited removal. And expedited removal is described by CBS News as, quote, a fast-tracked deportation process created by a 1996 law that bars certain immigrants from seeking relief before an immigration judge. End quote. The piece continues, quote, before the enactment of the law, which had been held up in court until last month, immigration authorities were only allowed to use expedited removal on immigrants apprehended within 100 miles from an international border who failed to demonstrate that they legally entered the United States and had been in the U.S. for at least 2 weeks. The expansion will apply expedited removal to undocumented immigrants apprehended anywhere in the United States if deportation agents can determine that they have lived in the country for less than 2 years and were not lawfully paroled or admitted. An immigrant will bear, quote, the affirmative burden to show to the satisfaction of the encountering immigration officer that he or she is not eligible to be summarily deported. The Trump administration has said that these new expedited removal rules will allow ICE to save funds and resources typically used for long-term detention and help this immigration court system reduce its massive case backlog. Lawyers and advocates, this is normal and sort of what we expect for lawyers and immigration advocates to do right now, quote, have said the policy will trample on the due process rights of immigrants by denying them a day in court and a meaningful opportunity to seek legal counsel. They have said immigrants may find it difficult to provide documents and otherwise evidence to prove they have been living here in the United States for at least 2 years, warning that some may be placed in expedited removal proceedings despite being exempt from the policy on paper. ICE is also apparently and just recently erected highway billboards in Pennsylvania depicting undocumented immigrants by local police, released by local police as part of an unprecedented public messaging campaign that former top agency officials denounced as inappropriate and politically driven. End quote. Also, the Trump administration has just announced something. Quote, this is one of the stories at Business Insider. Quote, this story is broken by Thomas Polanyi. Quote, the outgoing Trump administration just revealed its new citizenship test that's twice as long and uses exclusive terms like, quote, citizens instead of quote, all people. The story continues, quote, Although nearing the end of its term after an election defeat, the Trump administration just crossed off another to-do list in advance of President-elect Joe Biden's new administration, crafting a new and more complex test that immigrants must take to receive their citizenship. Officials under President Donald Trump unveiled the new civics test on Friday that replaces a President George W. Bush era test that's been used for the last 12 years. It's the final hurdle to naturalization before America's immigrants receive their decision from the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services and take the oath of allegiance in a naturalization ceremony. End quote. So that has just happened this week. Also, Business Insider has broken this news today that ICE is putting people who were released due to COVID-19 concerns back in jail. The decision is dangerous as the country enters another wave, end quote, which is true because we have seen prisons and immigration detention facilities be very, very contagious spots when it comes to contracting the coronavirus, being the worst place to be in when it comes to contracting COVID-19. This was a story at USA Today today. Quote, Biden might need years to reverse Trump's immigration policies on DACA, asylum, family separation, ICE raids, private detention, and more. End quote. Of course, the Trump administration has done so much damage to our current immigration system, it has just been unforgettable over the course of these 4 years. We'll be right back.